Okay, so we are live and so happy to be here with Marti Epstein and Deniz Khateri. Marti, of course, is a composer, and Deniz is this multifaceted artist that does all sorts of stuff, with which we're so excited to chat about. And so we're gathering today to talk just because they're both amazing, but also because we are going to be premiering a new piece of Marti's with text by Deniz in just a couple weeks. And so I wonder if we could talk, like, just at the beginning, kind of about that. The piece is titled Alpenglow. And Denise, if you don't mind, I wonder, could you just read the poem for us?
Sure. Yes, I pull it out, it's ready. So, okay. The burning cold, wind, the sky is red. I hesitate between sunset and dawn. My breath, a white cloud. My fingers are numb. Spring is coming. The eyes are frozen on the street. The heads are wrapped in newspapers. Trees under construction. Trees, the scaffolding. Their branches ask, will our leaves return? The wind hurts the cross of my forehead. Spring is coming. Colors wiggle on the bridges. Pale, running, biking. Colors, hiding in their collars. Their breath a white cloud, whispering. Spring is coming. Frozen ears rolling on the sidewalk. Rolling, reaching the screaming mouths, trapped in their white clouds, muted and far, ready to thaw, gathered for heat, sensing the cold, away from home, frozen on the road. My lips are iced, but I want to shout, spring is coming.
Thank you. I love how like present that feels. Like it feels like it was written about today. um I wonder, could you talk to a little bit about some background of that particular poem? Is that from a set? And then Marti, how maybe you came across it and where the connection between the two of you comes from?
Sure.
Should I do that first?
Yes.
So, without getting too detailed about how Deniz and I know each other, because I know we can talk about that in a little bit, but she and I have worked together before, several times actually, but with her doing shadow puppets to pieces of mine, but I had seen some plays that she had written. And initially, when I started thinking of a piece that I was going to write for you guys, initially, I was thinking, well, what's in the public domain? And I was thinking, well, maybe I will. I wanted to do the Lady Macbeth, the famous Lady Macbeth monologue from Macbeth, because I thought that would be really cool to do that for male voice. And then that didn't sit well. And then I thought I would do something wordless. And then I thought that was a cop-out. And I also think that words are so important because it can inform how the composer thinks of the piece. But also, Jeff, it gives you like something to activate your singing. And so I just had this flash, Denise, can you write me a little play, I think is what I said. And she did that. She wrote me a little play, and it didn't work for me. It's a brilliant play, but it didn't work for this piece. So I wrote back and I said, this isn't quite right for me. And she can tell you what's going to happen to that, because fortunately something good is going to happen with that. And then she wrote Alpenglow, and I looked at it and I said, this is totally perfect. It has all the things in it I love in a text. It has not only repeating phrases, but sort of little motives embedded inside the poem, like the white cloud and the ice and things like that. And so it just seemed completely perfect. So that's how that came about.
Yeah. It's a long story of like the first piece that I wrote for Marti, and I was between going with my instincts, and my instincts is always going with the composer's not just works and music, but also personality. And I didn't go with my instinct first. I was like, let's just write something that I always had in my mind. I always wanted to do this. I wanted to write this piece and perform it in a very interwoven way with music. Like music should be a core and main part of it. So I wrote a play that, in the end, it was called Salt, and I offered it to Marti and said, "Yeah, let's see. It could be a challenge because it's probably not you, but let's see how it works out." And then she was like, "No, it doesn't work." I was like, damn, I wanted to go with my instinct. So this time I followed my instincts and wrote a piece that I just read for you, and it's called Alpenglow, as you said. And I think it not only fits Marti's music, I mean, I hoped, but also it has a lot of her personality in it. Marti, to me, as she mentioned, she's my Iranian sister. I mean, I'm her Iranian sister. She's my American sister, or maybe Iranian, who knows. But she is, she has a lot of hope, and she has a lot of life in her. And when I was writing this piece, I was trying to kind of find this warmth in the middle of uncertainty and coldness and despair and all of this, frozen feelings and frozen situation. But then there is this, blossom that comes out that not everybody can see. But I think Marti is the person who sees it. So that's how this piece came about.
That's really lovely. I wonder, how do you know each other? Like, how did that happen, or what's like the sort of the seed of the collaboration and the friendship?
Well, what year is this? 2021. Okay, so 9 years ago, I was teaching a class at Berkeley called Techniques of Tonal Writing, and there was this student in this class named Bahar Royai, and she said, "I'm from Iran," and I said, "Nice to meet you." And somehow I could tell that this student was different from the other students. First of all, she was older, because when students come to Berkeley from Iran, they already have degrees. They come because they've done what their family wants them to do. They've gotten their engineering degree or their, computer science degree or whatever. And then they come to the United States to study music. So it's like extra motivated. And she thought she wanted to be a film composer, and she got bitten by the bug to be a concert music composer. And she came to all of my office hours and wanted to just like soak all of the information from my head into hers. So around that time, she met Deniz through a mutual friend of theirs, who ended up also being a student of mine. And Bahar said, "Oh, my friend Deniz wrote a play, and they're doing it at MIT, and I really want you to come. You really have to come to this play." And so I said, "Okay," because I live near MIT, so why not? And I met Deniz that night at the play. And I had never seen a play like this. It was largely in Persian, right? It was just a tiny bit of English. But the writing of it is so brilliant that I knew what was going on, even though at the time I couldn't speak the language. Fast forward, because of my association and friendship and love of Deniz and Bahar, and because of other Persian friends of mine, I've been studying Farsi, the language, and so now we have this other little connection because Deniz is helping me with my very sad Persian. But we, you know, she, like I said, she's done shadow puppets for a puppet theater piece of mine that I wrote a long time ago that I wanted to revive. She did shadow puppets and then an animation of shadow puppets for my opera Rumpelstiltskin. I've seen so much of her work throughout the years, and it's just, I feel like there's this sort of simpatico kind of relationship, even though I have no connection with theater myself as an artist. And Deniz is something of a musician. She has a beautiful singing voice, by the way, and she can kind of play the cello. So she'll tell you about that. But anyway, that's, I feel like that's a, you know, I sort of went beyond the answer to the question, but that's how we know each other. It was a deep connection that started with her very dear friend, Bahar. So, and I think maybe some of you know Bahar, I think. Yeah.
So I was curious while listening to Deniz speak the poem and hearing that Deniz kind of wrote the poem with the knowledge of Marti's music and with the knowledge that it was going to be set. So to my ears, the poem starts out in a very classical, natural sense, and it provokes a lot of like nature imagery. And then about a third of the way through, if I remember right, then all of a sudden like the human world kind of encroaches upon the poem and it gains this new meaning. Were you writing that poem thinking that it would have an effect on the music that Marti was going to write, or because you knew that Marti had unexpected twists and turns in her music by any chance? I'm kind of curious how the ideas behind the poetry played into the ideas of what you thought the music might become.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually both, because that twist that Marti has in her music, you may find that in a lot of my own works as well. So as Marti said, we have a lot of connections, like artistically, and you know, very similar visions. So writing that piece, of course, that would definitely be a part of my own, you know, choice, but I was also very much influenced by her music as well, because I remember the first time that I heard Marti's music, I think that was the piece that you wrote about Nebraska, if I'm not wrong. There
All
was
of
the
my pieces are
landscapes.
about Nebraska, more or less.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah,
It
I
was
know what you
about the
mean.
landscape. I apologize. I don't remember what
No, I know
exactly.
which one you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I remember that I didn't know that that was what you were going for. And when I heard that piece, um, I was seeing these like beautiful landscapes when I was, because I'm a very visual person, as you might imagine. And when I hear a piece of music, the first thing that I do is just like, you know, these images come to me. And after I found out, I think it was through the program note or something, that it was actually about those landscapes. I was like, wow. Um, I mean, she did her job well. It really worked. Um, so I think a lot of it, you know, that quality of nature, and then the you know, human part of it, was definitely inspired by Marti's music.
I was curious. Marti, you mentioned briefly the Rumpelstiltskin and a puppet theater piece. I'm curious whether you feel that you have a different approach in vocal writing and in dealing with sort of character through vocal writing when you're working with an opera or a theatrical work compared to a concert work, which is what this is going to be in the context of, you know, us standing on a stage in the context of a bunch of other pieces by other people?
That is such a good question, because at the end of the day, so I've written two operas. I've written Rumpelstiltskin, and then I wrote an opera for Boston Opera Collaborative, Opera Bites. It's supposed to be 10 minutes. It's 11 minutes. I'm not 100% happy with either of those pieces because I feel like my music isn't very narrative in its nature. It's more three-dimensional conceptual, kind of a carving out a sense of place or something. And so it was really, really challenging for me to tell a story, both in Rumpelstiltskin and in the other piece, which is called Absent Grace. And I feel like with a piece like this, like Alpenglow, I feel like I can treat the voice as kind of a hybrid between declaiming the text but being another instrument. And the very beginning of the piece, all four of you are doing these very short little objects, which are supposed to be sort of like little ice crystals. And when I wrote the two operas, for some reason it didn't occur to me that I could also do that with those pieces. Instead, I sort of tried to keep everything spinning out so I could keep the lines going and keep the dramatic flow going. And if I wrote another opera, I think I would try to do more what I like to do in a chamber music setting or in a song cycle setting, instead of trying to do it the other way around. So I'm happier with the chamber music I've written for voice than I am with the operas for that reason. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and it's really interesting that talking about those sort of like objects, or you're doing like Rubik's Cube kind of gestures when you're talking about the way that the piece works, because I think part of what the strength of the impression I get from Alpenglow has to do with how like architectural the approach of the musical form is, with the sort of tension of the text, which has a flow to it, but also, like you said, these sort of rhythms of repetition or restating or mirroring, I think that I love that strength of like a structural part of something and then little pushes against it. I think the piece really works beautifully in that way.
Thanks. I'm glad it comes across that way. I was a little bit late for when we were all meeting because I was trying to I made this analysis of the poem, and I color coded all these ideas in the poem that I don't even know if Deniz knows are there, that repeat, like these repeating leitmotifs and things like that. And I couldn't find it. I cleaned, which means I don't know where anything is. But I'm sure it will come across in the music. And I treated that phrase, "spring is coming," as this sort of, it's much more lyrical and much more obviously beautiful than anything else in the piece, because I was trying to be very literal about what I think Deniz meant when she wrote that phrase, "spring is coming." And there were lots of things in the poem that really spoke to me, like the wind feels like the cross, or it hits the cross on my forehead, whatever the exact line is, because we've all felt that when we walk outside and it's so brutally cold, and it's like it's hitting us right here. Or looking at the bridge and seeing all the colors go by, you're really more aware of the colors going by than the fact that there are people inhabiting those colors. And so I tried to use those things as leitmotifs in the piece. So
it's wonderful. I wanted to ask, what projects do both of you have coming up, and if there are going to be any other collaborations in the near future?
Well, we don't have anything specifically planned, but there better be more collaborations in the future. Actually, I am a bit character in an animation of Deniz's, so that's something I'm extremely proud of. I'll just say really quickly, I'm working on this piece for you guys was the second of 3 pieces that I wrote, or I am writing, for my Guggenheim Fellowship, and I'm now working on the 3rd piece, which is this giant behemoth for Sound Icon.
That sounds really cool. I can't wait to see what the Sound Icon is like and what that ends up sounding like.
Me too.
Project. I'm always curious because we work with a lot of young composers, and a lot of young composers sometimes tune into this. Do you have any advice for people who are looking at collaborating with poets? Or for Deniz, do you have any advice for what you like to see or not see when you work with composers?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, of course, it's very personal and it varies from person to person. I mean, artist to artist. But what I would, what would help me getting from a composer is, um, it's usually much more than their music. It's their whole artistic vision. What you know I mean, in different mediums. If it shouldn't necessarily it doesn't necessarily have to be a theater or like a play, but they may not be into theater, but it could be a piece of literature or a movie or painting or something. Any other um, medium of art. I think that would really help collaborating, whether you're collaborating with an artist or a visual art, with a writer or a visual artist, doesn't matter. I think to me it has to be more than just music and sounds. um, Having said that, it's also very helpful. I mean, you should definitely provide your collaborator with your previous works, or um, you know let them know about like your artist statements for your previous works, or the things that you would like to change, or the things that you like to explore maybe in the piece that you're working on. But aside from that, I think what really helps is your whole artistic vision. For our collaboration with Marti, I already knew her taste in film, in the film industry, and literature. I've seen her paintings, so I think that really adds to the connection. And I think it's all about the connection.
And I would also add that a lot of times with younger composers, they get very literal with text in general in a way that they don't really need to. Interestingly, I always use Schubert as an example for my composers who are just setting text, writing art song for the first time, because to me, Schubert is putting all the imagery from the poem into the song and is less concerned with setting each word very meticulously. And so I try to get them to, we spend a lot of time reading a poem that a student wants to set. We spend a lot of time reading it and analyzing it, and only then do I feel like they could be ready to try to set it. And also I would say they shouldn't write their own text. I have a lot of students who say, oh, I can't deal with this whole public domain thing. I'm just going to write my own text. And as someone who wrote her own libretto for Rumpelstiltskin, I can say that that is not a good idea to do that. Unless you have training in poetry or dramaturgy or something like that. It's better to try to collaborate with someone, I think.
That's so real. It's it's not the first time we've had that conversation among us.
You don't even know how real it is. I mean, I think at the end of the day, Rumpelstiltskin comes across okay. I think people love it. People will love it more when they get to see it with Deniz's animation, which is going to happen in the next few months. But every time I hear it, there are certain words or turns of phrase that I just cringe at. So,
are you a reviser by nature? Are you going to go back and pick at these things, or have you done a thing and then it's gone?
I do a thing and it's gone, but I take the lessons to another piece. So I really want to write another opera, and I really want to. I just was showing my composition class today Chaya Chernowin's Heart Chamber. We spent the whole class watching Heart Chamber, and I thought, that's kind of, I wouldn't write a piece like that because it's so Chaya, it's not me. but there are so many lessons for me to learn about, what kind of text do you write. She wrote her own text for that. But I would just love the opportunity basically to try to go more towards that kind of a thing, and not so much, telling a story through a conventional narrative.
We were lucky with Chaya. We got like just right on the perfect timeline for her piece for us, that she had like just finished that and finally had time to think about. So we snuck right in. Deniz, we only have a few minutes, but I wonder, so I was introduced to you and your work generally through Marti's piece, and sort of reading the text and then preparing for this. And I was struck in reading your bio, like how many things you do, and the sort of versatility and diversity of your output. And I wonder, like, is there, as someone who does, acting and writing and puppetry, do you identify with one more than the other, or how do you deal with all of these different ways of creating and deciding which thing it is that you want to do?
That's a very good question. It actually is it's really hard, because it gives you sometimes a really, really hard existential crisis. Like, what am I? What am I doing? What should I do? But I don't believe in like sticking to one thing for myself. It's just every person is different, and I was brought up in a society and in a family that was really strict on, pick one thing and just stay on the side that you picked once. And I kind of revolted against that. So my training was initially in acting, and I could say that I have, among all of these hats that I wear, acting has been the thing that I've had the most experience in. And then through acting and through the opportunities that I had working with amazing international artists, I found my way through writing as well. And then, when you're an actor, you get gigs that also involve puppetry. So I got into puppetry, and I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. So it's just that there is this hunger for creating that I have, and I don't think that labels should stop one from creating. So I mean, I don't necessarily think that I'm an expert in any of these fields, but it's just, I try.
Specialization is for insects.
Yes.
Says the new music specialists. So we're at about time when we started these the power concerts that Will and I started at Manhattan School 12 years ago or something. We had like a very strict 20 minutes and you're done. So we did a 30 minutes and we're done. But I will say, like, it was so lovely to hear. At the very beginning, we were talking about how, Deniz, you wrote the play for Marti for this, and Marti said that it didn't work. And that struck me as like, actually, what a lovely sign of the healthiest kind of collaboration, where like you're going back and forth. And it was so like wonderful to hear you talk about this connection that you both have. And I think as Loadbang, we're privileged to be like on the receiving end of your collaborative output.
I tried actually to make it work for about 3 days, and then I thought, no, I can tell, Deniz, that it doesn't work. I can do this.
But to be able to say that to somebody feels like a special thing, to have that sort of trust that you can do that. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for chatting. It feels like we could do this for much longer than 30 minutes, but for those of you watching, thank you very much for watching. Please check out the premiere of this brand new piece for us. We'll be doing on April 17th in New York. The concert is a live stream on YouTube, but you can find it very easily at loadbang.com. Thank you all.